Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, FY 2023 Targeted Training and Technical Assistance with VOCA Victim Assistance and Compensation Administrators, hosted by the Office for Victims of Crime. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Kate Peterson, Division Director with the State Victim Resources Division of OVC, to begin the presentation. Kate?
Thanks so much, Daryl. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. I am actually at the main part of Department of Justice, getting ready to honor National Missing Children's Day. So I am outside, so just bear with me. But that ceremony is immediately following this presentation, and so I will be joining them after this. Okay, so today we are here to talk about our very exciting solicitation for the training and technical assistance for state administrators. And this year, as a new twist on our previous solicitation for VOCA Victim Assistance Subrecipients. So what we're going to do today is talk about a quick overview. I got to be honest, the PowerPoint is about 50 pages long, and don't worry, we are not going through all 50 pages of this in detail. So we're going to do a quick overview of OVC and our mission. Hopefully you all are very familiar with that by now. We are going to spend a lot of time going over the solicitation, looking at the funding opportunity focus, the eligibility, and the required documents. We will spend some time talking about the application process and tools, and then, like Daryl said, take questions and answers. So again, I hope most of you are familiar with our office already. We are, the Office of Victims of Crime is committed to enhancing the nation's capacity to assist crime victims and to provide leadership in changing attitudes, policies, and practices to promote justice and the healing for all victims of crime. So our funding supports many different programs and communities, including tribal communities, and the bulk of our funding goes to the state victim compensation and assistance programs. And this solicitation is targeting specialized peer-to-peer training and technical assistance for those programs. The list of other programs that we support is on this slide, and you are going to be able to come back to it at any point because this will be posted for everybody's access. So moving on to our funding. So in fiscal year 2023, we have been authorized to spend over $1.8 billion to help improve victim services throughout the nation. The majority of that funding is going to the Victims of Crime Act, VOCA funding, is going to states and territories as formula funding on the compensation and on the assistance side. So again, this really demonstrates why it is so critical that we have peer-to-peer training available for states on the compensation and on the assistance side to really help enhance programming and make sure that we at OVC at the federal level are offering the tools that states and territories need to implement their programs. Approximately $95 million, sorry, Daryl, is going toward anti-trafficking funding, and then $95 million is going to tribal efforts. And the rest of that funding is discretionary funding. And I just want to add here that the pot of funding for this solicitation, even though it is going out for TA on the formula side, it is coming out of the discretionary programming bucket. All right, so let's talk about this funding opportunity. We're going to talk about the eligibility, the documents to apply, and then the application process and resources.
Kate, if I may just interject really quickly, your
Sure.
camera, it's half blocked. I don't know if your lens.
Oh yeah, my lens is, yep, sorry about that. Now I just totally blocked it. There, is that better?
Perfect, that's excellent, thank you.
Sorry, thank you so much, Daryl. Sorry, everybody. Maybe that was a sign. I shouldn't be on camera. Anyway, okay, eligibility-wise. So nonprofits, this application is eligible for nonprofits having a 501c3 status or other institutions of higher education, other than institutions of higher education, excuse me, and nonprofits that do not have a 501c3 status with the IRS, other than institutions of higher education. Moving right along, the program itself. So I've talked a little bit about this already, but the intent of this program is to fund peer-to-peer and subject matter expert training and technical assistance for the VOCA victim assistance and compensation administrators. And this year, This will also include VOCA victim assistance subrecipients. We have really recognized the need for specialized, targeted support for assistance and compensation administrators, both from the field and from Congress. In 2020, the Senate and their Senate appropriation language report, they included language that directed OVC to administer specialized peer-to-peer training and technical assistance. The goal of the project is to provide the peer-to-peer subject matter expert training, technical assistance, and support on federal grants management and administration for the assistance and compensation administrators and for VOCA victim assistance subrecipients. The theme throughout this presentation and throughout the solicitation is to really, it's for the applicants, and the end result is to really have a pulse and understanding of what the needs of the state administrating agencies are, expanding access, and having vision to offer support to the SAAs to enhance their programming. So when I say SAAs, I mean the state administrating agencies. This is really a state administrative driven project. The outcome should reflect the needs of the state administrators and also demonstrate a knowledge and understanding of the administrators, like at the local level, what the administrators are needing to be able to do their jobs as best as possible, and how we at the federal level can support them. The objective of the project is to provide VOCA victim assistance administrators and their subrecipients and compensation administrators through specialized training and technical assistance, the tools and resources to effectively administer their programs and services. All right, let's get into the deliverables. There is a very long list of deliverables in the solicitation itself. That's on pages 8 to 9 of the solicitation. I'm going to go over some of the deliverables, although not all of them, just because of the matter of timing. But as we listed out the deliverables for this solicitation, we were very intentional in not actually prescribing exactly what should be delivered. What we are really interested in hearing is your observations that you have from the field, what's already being done, what could be done, and what the field is wanting and needing. Therefore, our deliverables are a little bit broad in what we are requesting, because we are very curious about what you are proposing. We really want to hear from you all about the details of these deliverables and what makes the TA that you are going to be providing necessary and helpful and beneficial and encouraging access and equity in how the SAAs are administering their programs. So the first deliverable on here is developing peer-to-peer and subject matter expert training and technical assistance on managing and administering VOCA victim assistance and compensation grantees and VOCA victim assistance subrecipients. So we list out a number of different ways that TA could be provided. Those are examples. They are not mandated. I really want to draw everybody's attention to N in here, where we say expanding the subrecipient pool to include more organizations serving underrepresented populations, such as communities of color, Native American and other indigenous peoples of North America, including Alaska Natives, Eskimos, and Aleuts, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and/or Pacific Islanders, those with disabilities, those living in rural areas, and victims of abuse later in life. Additionally, we are asking for applicants to explain how they are going to support subrecipients with administering federal VOCA victim assistance funding. We are also asking applicants to explain how they're going to build a strong support system, enhance communication and learning across all of the state administrating agencies, including territories, and the Office for Victims of Crime. This could include regular meetings, briefs on promising practices, and cross-collaboration. And of course, we're also asking for annual reports, final reports that are identifying promising practices, model programs, because the whole point of this is to be able to share the information and to really help the SAAs have tools to expand and strengthen their programming, and other lessons learned. This includes working with an independent evaluator to obtain input from the stakeholders about the TA that's being offered. Okay, moving right along. Now we're getting into the money part of this. So it's one award. And for those of you who are familiar with our programming, we did issue the first version of the solicitation back in 2020. And at that time, the award was for $5 million. This time, for 2023, it is for $6 million. It is still for a 36-month period, and the fiscal year performance date will start on October 1st, 2023. So let me be very clear. I just kind of merged concepts in one sentence. The period of performance starts on October 1st, 2023. The reason the amount has been increased to $6 million is because we are including assistance, training and technical assistance to subrecipients in the solicitation. And that is we are really excited about that change and really excited to see what the field thinks is needed and how we can be better supporting subrecipients in the administration of their federal dollars. There is no match that's required for this program. I do want to provide our typical caveat that in certain cases we'll provide additional funding in future years to awards made under this solicitation or other solicitations through continuation awards. We would consider, among other factors, OJP strategic priorities, a recipient's overall management of the award, and the award-funded work's progress when making continuation award decisions. So this solicitation and other awards under this solicitation are subject to the availability of funding, obviously. Okay, so let's move on to the type of award. So some of our awards, our training and technical assistance awards, are issued as a cooperative agreement, and that's what this is. What that means is that there's actually a substantial amount of involvement between our agency, the Office of Victims of Crime, and the recipient during the performance period. So we will stay actively engaged in the delivery of the training and technical assistance, and we'll be really working in partnership with the recipient on identifying the needs of the field and then figuring out how to best issue them and deliver those and respond to those needs. Application and submission information. All right. I really hope everybody knows that the application process is a two-step process. The first is you must submit into grants.gov by June 20th. And we're going to go over this in more detail about what you actually need to submit by June 20th into grants.gov. Then the next deadline is June 27th. That's the Just Grants deadline when the total application must be submitted into Just Grants. We expect to issue all of our awards no later than September 30th of this year, so September 30th, 2023. And as a reminder, the project date should be on or after, start date should be on or after October 1st, 2023. So we're going to talk about the application itself and what must be included. So there are a couple of basic minimum requirements that must be in the application in order to be advanced to peer review and receive consideration for funding. So for us, that's a proposal abstract, a proposal narrative, which includes a description of the issue and the statement of a problem, project design and implementation, capabilities and competencies, and a plan for collecting the data for the solicitation's performance measures. And then also the budget web-based form, including budget details and budget narrative. We're going to go through each of these over the next few minutes. All right, let's talk about the proposal abstract. This is really a clear and distinct summary about your proposal. So it's like a cheat sheet. It's so that we can understand just on a very fast basis what the proposal actually is. It should not be more than 400 words, and it should talk about the purpose of the project, the primary activities, the expected outcomes, the service area, and the intended beneficiaries and recipients. It could be written in paragraph. It should be written in paragraph form without bullets or tables, written in the third person, and exclude any personally identifying information. Abstracts will be made publicly available on the OJP and USAspending.gov websites if the project is awarded. So that project abstract actually becomes pretty important because it is public facing, and then it is also something that everybody is relying on as kind of their introduction to the project. The proposal narrative format. Okay, now we're talking about the narrative. So really the bulk of the application should be double-spaced, 12-point font, no less than 1-inch margins, not to exceed 25 pages, and must be submitted as an attachment through Just Grants. just as a reminder, it's really important to adhere to the technical formatting requirements. If a proposal fails to comply with the length restrictions, we may consider such noncompliance in peer review and in final award decision-making process. Okay, so let's talk about the narrative, the substance of the narrative. The description of the issue, that's worth 10%. The project design and implementation is worth 30%. The capabilities and competencies is worth 30%. And then the plan for collecting the data required for the solicitation's performance measures is 15%. You will see that the focus is on the project design and implementation and the capabilities and competencies. We're going to go into this again in more detail. But just as a reminder of what the theme is for the solicitation, it is we are really looking for the peer-to-peer expertise. This is a state administrator and territory administrator driven project. So the TA that is being done should be reflective of the local, state, and territory's needs. And that should be explained in the design and implementation. And then in the capabilities and competencies section, how you have those expertise to provide the needed services. So the description of the issue, you're going to describe the peer-to-peer and subject matter expert training needs for the intended grantees and subrecipients. So for us, it's the VOCA victim assistance and compensation grantees and the VOCA victim assistance subrecipients. We want to know about any current TA that is available to the administrators on the assistance and the compensation side and to the subrecipients, the availability of those resources, access to those resources, and the current gaps in the services. Applicants may use qualitative and quantitative data to describe the problem and make sure to cite your data sources. Now we're going to talk about the project design and implementation. So we are asking you to address all of the objectives listed in the goals, objectives, deliverables. There's really only one clear objective, so that makes life a little bit easier. We want you to be brief, concise, and clear. We want to make sure that the information is consistent throughout your proposal. Really spell out the goals and measurable objectives. We're going to go through, I guess we use this term of art, SMART. We're going to go through that and explain what that is: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, and focus on the future and set a realistic timeline to complete the project. So what we want to hear from you all is the plan to provide the peer-to-peer and subject matter expert TA in close collaboration with OVC and OJP on federal grants management and administration for the comp administrators, the assistance administrators, and subrecipients. We really want to see the plans for direct trainings, technical assistance, developing materials, and other support to SAAs as identified by the applicant. And again, I said this at the beginning, but this is really we are not being directive here about what that should look like. We want to hear from you and see what you are proposing, and it reflects your understanding and your connection to the administrators and to the needs of the administrators, so that we have a sense of what ultimately is going to be provided and also the relationship that you have with the administrators. Describe the applicant's projects and goals and objectives. There is a list. There's a long laundry list of different requirements under the narrative, the capabilities and competencies section. A few of the other ones that I'm going to highlight is explaining how you will facilitate, coordinate, and deliver the efforts. So that really means, like, we list out some examples here. So for example, teleconference, video conference, webcasting, regional or national meetings, focus groups, conferences, train-the-trainer sessions, on-site technical assistance, and writing templates, toolkits, and other models of support. But we're asking you, we want to emphasize, to explain how the applicant will facilitate, coordinate, and deliver all of those efforts. So it's not just the actual things themselves, the end product, it's also the process by which you are going to work with us, work with the SAAs, and deliver your project, your deliverables. That was repetitive. Okay, moving on. I'm going to focus on number 6 in the application, which is including a timeline that identifies a time frame for all the tasks and activities to be completed. That's really critical. That gives us a sense of what this project is going to look like. And of course, things can change and circumstances change, which would, make it a little bit more challenging. So we want to necessitate a change in the timeline. But from the very beginning, is the proposal realistic? Are all of the different things you are proposing to accomplish realistic, and in what time frame do you think you're going to be able to do that? That is really important from our perspective. Describing how the applicant will involve and communicate with OVC, keep us informed about the recipient's activities, and obtain input from OVC to inform the direction of the TA. That's another key part of this, is really explaining what you perceive that relationship with OVC looking like and how you will keep us closely involved. And then also how you are sharing your role and communicating your role and OVC's role to the field. Okay, continuing on with the capabilities and competencies, we are, sorry, one second. Oh, no, we're now on to the capabilities and competencies. I apologize. Okay, so this section, we are asking you all to identify the key individuals and organizations involved in the proposed project. We are really looking for your experience at the peer-to-peer level, working with assistance and compensation administrators and funding. We want you to describe the roles and responsibilities of all the project partners and key staff and really help us understand where that peer-to-peer experience is coming from. We're asking you to demonstrate that the key individuals and consultants delivering the TA have direct experience and expertise in peer-to-peer training for state administering agencies, local government agencies, and nonprofit service providers on federal grants management, administration, and planning. We're asking you to list out the qualifications and experience of the key individuals, demonstrate that individuals and organizations identified have the capacity to address the stated issue and can successfully implement the proposed project activities. Everything's related, everything's tied into each other. So as I hear that, as I hear myself reading that, I'm like, well, you will also see that in the time task plan. And then describe the applicant's organizational structure. Continuing on with capabilities and competencies, we want to know from you what the applicant's experience working at the intersection of VOCA victim assistance administrators and or compensation administrators is, and the general victim assistance field. So that's, again, like, all of these are really key. I will just keep coming back to the theme that it is peer-to-peer, administrator-driven training and technical assistance. That is the core of this project. It is articulated in the Senate report appropriations language. You see it throughout our solicitation. That is what we want, and that is what, because that is what we are hearing from the field, is really important. It's people with the expertise and experience administering VOCA victim assistance and compensation dollars, working with subrecipients to administer those dollars. We're also asking you to describe the applicant's experience working on large-scale planning projects, include information about establishing goals, objectives, and timelines, and meeting deadlines, and demonstrate the applicant's capacity to conduct a comprehensive assessment of the needs of VOCA victim assistance and or compensation administrators and the VOCA victim assistance subrecipients. So keep in mind that there's a lot of work out there that's been done on comprehensive assessment. So what we're really looking for is new information on this. So you don't have to duplicate what's already out there. What we're really looking for is how you are going to be thoughtful about identifying the needs and assess and getting a pulse again for what's happening and on the assistance and on the assistance and compensation side of this funding. Describe the applicant's expertise and experience providing TA to VOCA victim assistance and compensation administrators and subrecipients, and then demonstrate that the applicant has at least 3 years of experience providing support to grantees and expending federal funding. Okay, so those were the two primary, the bulk of the narrative section. Now we are wrapping up talking about the plan for collecting data. The solicitation really goes into this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The applicants are not required to submit performance data with the application. Rather, performance measure information is included as an alert that successful applicants will be required to submit performance data as part of each award's reporting requirement. These are the parameters against which progress toward goals can be assessed, the common language linking your plans and your performance, and consistent of your program's inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes, like a logic model. While this data satisfies the reporting requirement of your grant, it also provides an excellent opportunity to self-assess your program and your agency's processes. So as a first step, review your program's performance measures, focusing on the numbers, narratives, or other data you will need to collect to answer the questions posed by OVC. OJP requires each successful applicant to submit regular performance data that shows the completed work results. The performance data directly relates to the goals, objectives, and deliverables as identified in the goals, objectives, and deliverables discussion and section of the solicitation. And then we provide a link on here for you to be able to access. Or are we supposed to put that in the chat, Daryl? Thank you.
Yep, that'll be entered in the chat.
Thank you so much, Daryl. All right, moving on to the budget web-based forms, a worksheet and budget narrative, and this gets submitted into Just Grants. So you use the Just Grants web-based form. Personnel costs should relate to the key personnel for the project. You will break out the cost by year, reflecting 36 months total of the project activity. And I think Daryl is going to put into the chat here again a link to the OJP application, grant application resource guide, and the how to complete the application in Just Grants, the budget training. Is that right, Daryl? Sorry, I just can't see the chat.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we get into what we call a SMART budget. All right, so SMART. Be smart, and so does your budget. Your budget also needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So be specific when you're listing out all of your subcategories. Measurable, make sure your costs are measurable under the computation column of the budget. Attainable, to ensure that your budget items are achievable, your budget needs to make sense. Is there enough work for your project director to be hired at a full-time basis? On the flip side, do you have ample resources included in your budget to meet those objectives? Relevant. If you put your timeline next to your budget, we love a timeline, so the timeline comes up over and over again. If you put your timeline next to your budget and are sure that each item is accounted for, then your budget should be relevant. If you listed hiring a project director in your timeline and discussed the project director's role in your project design, then it would be relevant to include a project director in your budget. On the other hand, if you did not include the project director in your timeline or project design, then it would not be completely relevant to include that in your budget. Time bound. Your budget is usually listed year by year for a certain duration. Pay attention to what the duration is and prepare your budget broken down by year. You want to make sure reviewers can understand your budget and that it makes sense. Okay, additional documents to apply. So the application checklist, this is for those of us who are not as organized as others of us, I really love the checklist because the checklist sets out all the documents you need to include in your application. So we do have that checklist at the end of the solicitation. There may be other resources that you want to look at too to help you with submitting the DOJ application submission checklist, the Just Grants quick reference about application attachments. So those references will just help you in figuring out how to upload documents if you're having any other questions or issues. Sorry, did some water. All right, so now we have the hallmarks of an outstanding application. Really use simple and concise language. Can't emphasize that enough. We don't need fancy language. We just need to be able to understand it. Oof, that was loud, sorry. We just really need to be able to understand what the application is, what you are proposing. The information should be presentable and organized. Be realistic about how you're going to achieve your goals and get feedback from those who may run the project or you may be working with. And then check, recheck, and check again. It's on the PowerPoint. It seems pretty obvious, but again, for those of us who are not as organized and might wait until the last minute, it's really important to have as much support as you can get ahead of time so you can do all the checking before submitting, especially with the budget. Okay, common reasons for a weak application. Too ambitious or lacks focus. The applicant lacks appropriate expertise to carry out the proposed project. So once again, I know I sound like a broken record and I'm sorry, but I just really want to keep emphasizing that this is a peer-to-peer based solicitation. What we are looking for is peer-to-peer expertise. So people with expertise with administering or working with VOCA the administration of VOCA victim assistance and compensation funding, and helping subrecipients administer those federal dollars. It's administrator driven, and we are really focused on equity and access to the programs, both on the compensation side and on the assistance side. No evidence of feasibility. Do not assume that we are as familiar with the project as you are. Another area of weakness is poor writing and a lot of errors, and no citations or source of data. That's really true. We really look to this, we look at the citations and we look at the data, the sources of data that is provided. Okay, the application process. Now we get into the grants.gov and the Just Grants. Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna read from this because it's easier that way. It's clearer than me trying to explain it. So this part of the grants life cycle involves completing and submitting web-based forms and any requested attachments based on the requirements in the published solicitation. The process of submitting an application in Just Grants begins in grants.gov. Once you have located a funding opportunity within DOJ, you will submit the SF 424 and SF LLL in grants.gov. So that's what gets submitted into grants.gov. That's the extent of the application requirements in grants.gov. Aside from the SF 424 and the SF LLL, most of your application is entered into Just Grants. Your entity information is populated based upon entries made in sam.gov and used in grants.gov. So you have two application submission deadlines. One is for grants.gov and one is for Just Grants. Each solicitation has a submission deadline, and each solicitation has an application submission deadline in grants.gov. After that date, the solicitation is removed from grants.gov and no one will be able to apply any longer. So it's really highly recommended that you check the due date in grants.gov and try to submit at least 72 hours prior to the deadline to give you enough time to correct any errors and resubmit if necessary. It's okay to enter preliminary information in grants.gov if you haven't fully determined your budget or project scope. You'll be able to edit and update all of your entries in Just Grants. Once the application has been submitted and validated in grants.gov, it is automatically sent over to Just Grants for completion. It may take several days for grants.gov to complete validations and release it to Just Grants. Then Just Grants has its own submission deadline, typically 1 to 2 weeks after grants.gov. For example, if your due date for us, instead of using a hypothetical, we're just going to use the real date. So for us, the grants.gov deadline is June 20th. Then the actual deadline for submission through Just Grants is June 27th. The Just Grants submission should include all items that are required in the solicitation. This is it. That's your final shot at submitting the application. Some of the ways that Just Grants streamlines the process is that you are provided with the ability to use a web-based budget detail worksheet. Not only is this process more efficient, but it also establishes a shared structure and narrative for all of DOJ applicants and those of us reviewing. Streamlined validation of your budgets allows the process of clearing new budgets to go much faster. Your organization, specifically your assigned entity administrator, can control users and award assignments and does not require intervention from DOJ to make updates to those assignments. The entity administrator defaults to your organization's eBiz point of contact, but that person can reassign responsibilities to another user as needed. All right, just in case we haven't gone through this enough, again, the submission date for the SF424 and SFLLL into grants.gov is June 20th, and the full application must be submitted into Just Grants by June 27th. Okay, moving right along. Web-based forms for submission in Just Grants. We talked about the budget and the budget narrative. There are certain web-based forms that must be submitted directly into the system. So the proposal abstract, the solicitation-specific data submitted with the application, the goals, objectives, deliverables, and timelines, budget web-based form, and the application disclosure of duplication costs. Those are all submitted in through Just Grants. it says in here that for those who are return users, you will need to submit your goals, objectives, deliverables, and timeline just like before. Make sure your budget information is included in the budget detail form, and lastly, your disclosure or your disclosure of duplication in cost items. Okay, so what happens after you submit your application? What's next? So once all of the application materials have been submitted, and we review them, the entity will be notified, which happens usually before September 30th. Please remember who your entity administrator and authorized representative are, for they will be notified when the deadline for applications will be changed. The deadline for the applications is not going to be changed, just to be clear. The system will also, unless there's an emergency, the system will notify the application submitter, entity administrator, and authorized representative when the application has been received in Just Grants from grants.gov, and the entity administrator will receive notification on when the award notification has been sent. If you have submitted your application, the status will be submitted. You may also see a banner that indicates that it's past due. This banner indicates that the submission deadline has passed and that not that your application is past due. Okay. Now we're getting to resources. We can kind of go quickly through this section, and then I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any questions. So there's a long list of resources here. I'm not going to go through all of these. We can skip the one about our OVC website. Hopefully you found that already. Let's look at the DOJ Grants Financial Guide. That is really critical. That is what we should all be operating by. It's certainly what we as grant managers are using, and you all should be using it too in consideration of the proposals and especially your budget. The next one is the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. I think Daryl's already put that into the chat, but that is a helpful resource. We also have a tool on information on grant measurement reporting. Daryl has that up already. SAM.gov, very important to register with SAM.gov. You have to do that before you can even apply, so hopefully you have already done that. You must renew and validate your registration every 12 months, and if you don't renew it, it expires. And an expired registration can delay or prevent application submission in grants.gov and just grants. So registration and renewal can take up to 10 business days to complete. So make sure to get that done and make sure that it's already done if you are not certain. Okay, there's a grants.gov resource link, Just Grants training resources, everybody's favorite subject. People like this almost as much as they like the suitability special condition and performance measurement. Okay, Just Grants office hours. If you are having any questions or issues, highly recommend that you take advantage of the Just Grants office hours. People are actually incredibly helpful and want to help you through the process and answer any questions. There are many different actual substantive resources, TA resources through OVC. And then we can just skip right on ahead to information on OJP resources generally, and preparing for solicitation. So we've done a lot of this already. There are many different solicitations posted and currently open. A lot of them are starting to close actually. But we have all of our webinars are posted on that link that you can access. And you can find all of our current funding opportunities on our website. And please sign up for news from OVC. Our director is wonderful about communicating updates and information about what's happening at our office. So I hope if you have not already signed up for her messages, please do. And you can always visit DOJ generally for other funding opportunities. So with that, Daryl, I'm going to stop talking, and the rest of the information in here is other resources that we've kind of already covered. And I am happy to take questions. I'm going to go on mute, Daryl, while you ask me questions.
Thanks so much, Kate. And to everybody on today's webinar, I knew we did go through things. There's a lot of information. The recording, PowerPoint, and transcript will be posted to the OVC website. So if you need to go back, reference anything as you prepare your applications, you'll be able to do so. And you will receive an email when and where to access those when they are posted. If you have a question, far right of your screen, 3 dots, hit Q&A, select all panelists, and we can go through those as we do have some remaining time today. While we're waiting for some to come in, Kate, I will just put this screen up If once we conclude, you have any questions about the programmatic requirements of this solicitation specifically, contact the OJP Response Center listed here at grants@ncgrs.gov, and they'll work with OVC directly on crafting responses as needed.
So Daryl, because of the sun glare, I can't see if there's anything coming up in the chat, but from your silence, I'm assuming there's nothing coming up.
Correct, nothing yet. You're very thorough.
Or maybe I just put everybody to sleep out there.
Yeah, nothing in the queue at this time.
Okay. Well, if there's anybody left, thanks so much for spending a chunk of your afternoon with us, and good luck. And there are lots of resources around if you need any assistance. So thank you very much, and have a great afternoon. Daryl, thanks for all your help.
All right, so on behalf of the Office of Victims of Crime and our panelists, we want to thank you for joining today's webinar. This will end today's presentation.